I had just come home from the hospital after 3 sleepless nights beside my dying mother. All I wanted was quiet, maybe a hug from my wife and daughter. But when I walked into my house, my daughter looked terrified, and the basement door was locked. Then I heard banging from underneath the floor. When I opened that door, I found my wife tied to a chair in the basement, and my teenage daughter standing behind me, whispering, "Dad, you don't understand. I had to do it." That night, I learned 2 things. My daughter had discovered a secret about her mother, and the truth about my family was far worse than anything I could have imagined. Before I begin, if you've ever lived through betrayal like this, please leave a comment, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. The night I came home from the hospital felt heavier than any night I can remember. Hospitals have a way of draining something from your soul. The lights are always too bright, the air smells like chemicals and fear, and every hallway feels like it's holding someone's last breath. For 3 days straight, I had barely slept. My mother had suffered a severe stroke, and the doctors weren't sure she was going to make it through the week. I stayed beside her bed almost the entire time, listening to the steady beep of machines and watching her chest rise and fall. When the nurse finally convinced me to go home and rest, it was already after 9 in the evening. "Your mother is stable for now," she told me gently, "but you need sleep. You won't be able to help her if you collapse." She was right, of course, but leaving my mother there felt wrong somehow, like I was abandoning her. Still, exhaustion eventually wins every argument. So I drove home through the quiet streets, my mind foggy and my body aching. All I could think about was sitting on my couch for a few minutes, maybe hugging my wife, Laura, and hearing my daughter complain about homework like she always did. Those small, normal moments suddenly felt precious. Our house sat at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac. The porch light was on when I pulled into the driveway, glowing softly against the dark sky. At first, everything looked normal, but when I stepped inside, something felt off. You know that strange feeling when you walk into a room and instantly know something isn't right, even if you can't explain why? That's exactly what hit me the moment I closed the front door. The house was too quiet. Not peaceful quiet, uncomfortable quiet. Usually, the television would be on in the living room, or music would be playing in the kitchen. Laura loved having background noise while she cooked. But that night, there was nothing. Just silence. "Laura?" I called out, setting my keys on the small table near the door. No answer. "Emma?" Still nothing. I frowned and stepped farther into the house. The living room lights were on, but the couch was empty. A blanket was folded neatly over the armrest, and Emma's backpack sat near the coffee table. That meant she was home. "Emma?" I called again. This time I heard movement upstairs. Footsteps. Slow ones. A moment later, Emma appeared at the top of the staircase. She was 16 years old, tall for her age, with long brown hair that looked like it hadn't been brushed that day. The second she saw me, she froze. "Dad," she said quietly. Something about the way she said it made my stomach tighten. Normally, Emma would run down the stairs and hug me after I'd been gone for days. She was always affectionate like that. But this time, she stayed exactly where she was, standing there, watching me. "You're home early," she said. Her voice sounded nervous. "I wouldn't call 3 days at the hospital early," I replied, forcing a tired smile. "How's your mom?" Emma hesitated. Then she looked away. That tiny movement set off alarms in my head. "What do you mean?" I asked. "I mean, where is she?" Emma swallowed. "She's downstairs," she said. Downstairs. The word lingered in the air longer than it should have. Our basement wasn't a place people usually hung out. It was mostly storage space with an old workbench and some shelves full of boxes. "Why is she in the basement?" I asked. Emma didn't answer right away. She just stood there, gripping the railing of the staircase. "Emma," I said more firmly. Finally, she walked slowly down the stairs. When she reached the bottom step, she stopped a few feet from me. Up close, I could see something I hadn't noticed from across the room. Her hands were shaking. "Dad," she said softly. "What's going on?" She opened her mouth, then closed it again. That's when I heard it. A dull sound. Thump. At first, I thought it might be pipes in the walls or something shifting in the house. Then it happened again. Thump. This time, it was louder, and it was definitely coming from the basement. I turned my head toward the hallway where the basement door was. "Emma, what was that?" She didn't answer. Another desperate bang hit the basement door from below. "Let me out!" Laura screamed. There was no mistaking that voice. It was Laura. Every nerve in my body went cold. I stared at Emma. "Who did you say was... Why did you say your mother is locked in our basement?" Tears filled her cheeks. "Because," she whispered, "I found out what she's been doing while you were gone." A cold knot formed in my chest. "What are you talking about?" Emma wiped her face with the sleeve of her hoodie. "She wasn't alone here, Dad." My pulse quickened. "What do you mean she wasn't alone?" Emma looked straight into my eyes. "There's been a man coming to the house." The words hit me like a punch to the stomach, but before I could respond, Laura's voice screamed again from the basement, and this time there was pure panic in it. "He's going to kill us!" My blood turned to ice. I slowly turned toward Emma. "Who," I asked carefully, "is she talking about?" Emma's voice trembled as she answered, "The man she's been meeting." Silence filled the room. Then Emma whispered something that made my heart stop. "He's still here." The moment Emma said those words, the air inside the house seemed to change. "He's still here." For a few seconds, I honestly thought I had misheard her. Hospitals make your brain slow. The lack of sleep, the constant stress, the smell of antiseptic, it all blurs together until reality starts to feel like a dream you can't quite wake up from. But Emma's pale face told me this wasn't a dream. "Emma," I said carefully, "what do you mean he's still here?" She didn't answer immediately. Her eyes flicked toward the hallway behind me, the one that led to the kitchen and the back door. That small glance made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. "Emma," I repeated, this time more firmly, "talk to me." Downstairs, Laura was still shouting, her voice muffled but desperate. "Please, someone help me!" The pounding started again, harder this time. Every instinct in my body screamed that my wife needed help immediately. But Emma was standing between me and the basement door like a frightened guard dog, and something in her expression told me this situation was far more complicated than it looked. "Why did you lock your mother down there?" I asked. Emma hugged her arms around herself. "I didn't know what else to do." "That's not an answer." Her eyes filled with tears again. "Dad, you weren't supposed to come home tonight." The words hit me strangely. "What does that mean?" She took a shaky breath. "I thought I had more time to figure things out." Before I could respond, Laura screamed again from the basement. "Daniel, please, he's still in the house." The sound of my name snapped something inside me. I rushed toward the basement door, grabbing the handle and yanking it open. Emma tried to stop me. "Dad, wait!" But I was already pulling the door wide. The basement stairs dropped down into darkness, the single overhead bulb casting a weak yellow glow across the concrete floor. And at the bottom of those stairs, my wife was tied to a chair. Her wrists were bound behind her back with what looked like extension cords. A strip of duct tape hung loose around her neck where it had clearly been ripped away from her mouth. Her hair was messy, her eyes red from crying. The second she saw me, relief flooded her face. "Daniel!" she cried. I rushed down the stairs 2 at a time. "Laura, what the hell is going on?" She was shaking so badly the chair rattled against the concrete. "Untie me first, please," she begged. I quickly pulled the cords loose from her wrists. They were tied tight enough to leave deep red marks in her skin. As soon as her hands were free, she grabbed my arm. "You have to listen to me," she said urgently. Behind me, Emma slowly walked down the stairs. Laura noticed her immediately, and the look that flashed across my wife's face wasn't relief. It was fear. "Emma," she whispered. Emma stopped halfway down the stairs. No one spoke for a moment. Then Laura turned back to me. "She thinks I'm having an affair," she said quickly. I blinked. "What?" "She saw someone come to the house and jumped to the wrong conclusion." Emma shook her head instantly. "That's not true." Laura's voice sharpened. "Emma, stop this right now." "No," Emma said, her voice trembling but firm. "You stop lying." I looked back and forth between them, feeling like I'd walked into the middle of a nightmare I couldn't understand. "All right," I said slowly, holding up a hand. "Everyone stop talking." Both of them gone silent. "Laura, someone explain what's happening and do it from the beginning." Emma stepped down another stair. "I'll tell you." Laura grabbed my arm tighter. "No, she doesn't know what she's talking about." Emma's face flushed with anger. "I know exactly what I saw." "Emma," I said, trying to stay calm, "tell me." She looked directly at me. 2 nights ago, after you left for the hospital, Mom told me she was going to the grocery store. Laura's grip on my arm tightened. "But she didn't go to the store. She went outside and met someone in the driveway." My stomach twisted. "What kind of someone?" "A man." Laura sighed heavily. "Oh my God." Emma ignored her. "He pulled up in a black car. I watched from the window upstairs." "And?" I asked. "They talked for a few minutes. Then she let him into the house." The room fell quiet. Laura closed her eyes like someone who had just heard an annoying rumor repeated the 100th time. "Emma, we talked about this." "No, you talked," Emma snapped. "You kept making excuses." I turned to Laura. "Is any of this true?" She rubbed her forehead. "Yes," she said. The single word landed like a rock in my chest. "But it's not what you think," she added quickly. Emma laughed bitterly. "You always say that." I felt my heartbeat getting faster. "Laura," I said carefully, "who is the man coming to our house?" She hesitated, just for a second, but that second felt like an hour. Finally, she said quietly, "His name is Victor." I had never heard that name before. "Victor who?" Laura looked away. Emma answered instead, "Victor Cole." Something about the way she said the name made my stomach twist. "Do I know him?" I asked. Emma nodded slowly. "Yes," she said, "very well." A cold feeling crawled up my spine. "Then why don't I remember him?" Emma swallowed. "Because the last time you saw him," she said softly, "was 10 years ago." Laura's face went pale. "Emma, don't," she whispered. But Emma kept going. "You saw him the night he threatened our family." My mind raced, digging through old memories buried deep in the past. Then suddenly, it clicked, and when it did, my blood turned to ice. Victor Cole, I repeated slowly. The name tasted bitter in my mouth. Laura, I said quietly, that man went to prison because of us. Laura's eyes filled with fear. Yes. I felt the room spin slightly. And you're telling me he's been coming to our house while I've been at the hospital with my dying mother? Laura nodded weakly. Yes. My hand started shaking. Why? Before she could answer, a loud creak echoed from the floor above us. Footsteps. Heavy ones, slow, deliberate. All three of us froze. Someone was walking through my house. Emma's voice dropped to a whisper. I told you, she said. He never left. The sound of those footsteps above us felt like a hammer striking directly against my chest. Slow, heavy, moving across the wooden floor of my living room. For a moment, none of us even breathed. Emma stood halfway on the basement stairs, gripping the railing so tightly her knuckles had turned white. Laura was still sitting in the chair I had just untied her from, her eyes wide with pure terror. The footsteps continued. Creak. Pause. Another step. My brain struggled to process what was happening. Someone was upstairs, inside my house, and judging by the way Laura's face had drained of color, we all knew exactly who it was. Daniel, she whispered. Her voice trembled so badly it barely sounded like her. You have to call the police. Emma shook her head immediately. No. I turned to her. No, I repeated. He said if we called anyone, Emma began, then stopped herself. If who called anyone? I demanded. Emma's breathing became shallow. Victor. Laura suddenly stood up, grabbing the back of the chair for support. You talked to him? She asked Emma, horrified. Emma didn't answer right away. That silence told me everything. You talked to him, Laura repeated, this time with disbelief. I had to, Emma said quietly. My head snapped toward her. What do you mean you had to? Another slow step echoed above us. All three of us instinctively looked up toward the basement ceiling as if we could somehow see through the wood and drywall. Emma lowered her voice to a whisper. He came yesterday afternoon. Laura's face twisted with fear. You told me he left. He did leave, Emma said quickly, but he came back later. My pulse jumped. You mean yesterday he was inside this house while you and your mother were here alone? Emma nodded. Laura ran a trembling hand through her hair. Oh my God! What happened yesterday? I asked. Emma looked down at the stairs for a moment, like she was replaying the memory in her mind. I heard a car pull up, she said quietly. I thought maybe it was Dad coming home early. She looked up at me briefly before continuing. But when I looked through the window, it wasn't you. The footsteps upstairs paused. Completely. The silence that followed felt worse than the sound. Emma continued speaking in a whisper. It was a black sedan, the same one Mom met the night before. Laura closed her eyes. I went downstairs to ask Mom what was going on, Emma said, but before I could say anything, the doorbell rang. My chest tightened. And Mom opened the door, Emma continued, and there he was. Her voice shook as she said the next words. Victor. Another creak echoed from above. He was still moving, but slower now, like someone who knew people were listening. Emma kept talking. "He didn't look like I expected," she said. "I thought he'd look like some kind of criminal." Laura bitterly whispered, "He is." "But he didn't," Emma replied. "He looked normal, calm." "That's how he tricks people," Laura muttered. I held up my hand gently. "Let her finish." Emma nodded. "When Mom saw him, she looked scared, but not surprised." That detail made my stomach twist. "Not surprised?" I repeated. Emma shook her head. "It was like she already knew he was coming." Laura stepped forward quickly. "Because he had been calling me," she said. My eyes moved to her. "You never told me that." "I didn't want you worrying while you were at the hospital with your mother." The explanation felt thin, but there wasn't time to argue about it now. Emma continued. "They talked in the living room for about 20 minutes. I stayed on the stairs and listened." Laura rubbed her temples. "Emma!" "You said we should never lie in this family," Emma replied sharply. Laura didn't respond. "What were they talking about?" I asked. Emma swallowed. "Money." Laura closed her eyes again. "Victor kept saying Mom owed him," Emma explained. "Owed him what?" I asked. "Half." The word echoed in the basement. "Half of what?" I asked. Emma looked directly at me. That's when I heard something scary. My stomach tightened. "What?" Emma's voice dropped even lower. "He said you stole it from him." The world seemed to tilt slightly under my feet. "Me?" I said slowly. Emma nodded. Laura suddenly stepped between us. "That's not true," she said firmly. But Emma wasn't looking at her anymore. She was looking at me. "Dad, what was he talking about?" Before I could answer, another sound echoed from upstairs, a door opening, then closing, slowly. The footsteps started again. This time, they were closer to the basement hallway. My pulse hammered in my ears. "Daniel," whispered Laura urgently, "we need to hide." "Hide?" whispered Emma back. "He doesn't know Daniel is home yet," Laura said quickly. "If he finds out—" Her words were cut off by the unmistakable sound of the basement door handle rattling. All three of us froze. Someone upstairs was trying the door. The handle twisted again. Locked. Emma's eyes widened. "I locked it earlier," she whispered. Laura grabbed my arm. "He thinks I'm still down here alone." The handle stopped moving. For 3 long seconds, nothing happened. Then a deep male voice came through the door, calm, almost amused. "Laura." The sound of his voice sent a chill through my entire body. "Are you still down there?" No one answered. The man chuckled softly. "You know you can hear me." Emma's breathing became rapid. Laura squeezed my arm painfully hard. "Don't say anything," she whispered. The man spoke again. "You should have listened to me earlier," he said through the door. "Locking yourself in the basement won't solve anything." Emma looked at Laura confused. "Locking yourself in?" Laura shook her head quickly, but the man continued. "You think hiding down there changes the deal." "Deal?" My stomach dropped. "Laura," the voice continued calmly, "I came here for one reason." The basement went silent. Then he said something that made my blood run cold. "You owe me what your husband stole." I clenched my fists because suddenly I understood something terrifying. Victor wasn't just here for Laura, he was here for me. And judging by the slow sound of something metallic sliding against the basement door upstairs, he was prepared to stay until he got what he wanted. The metallic scrape from above sent a jolt through my chest. My hand shook as I gripped the edge of the basement stairs, trying to make sense of what was happening. For a brief moment, I considered running, just grabbing Laura and Emma and leaving through the back door. But deep down, I knew that wouldn't be enough. Victor didn't come here for a simple confrontation. He came for something bigger, something he thought belonged to him. Laura tightened her grip on my arm. Her knuckles were white. Her breathing was shallow. I could feel the panic radiating off her in waves. "Daniel, we can't let him see you," she whispered urgently. He'll kill us if he knows you're here." I swallowed hard, feeling the weight of the moment. "Then what do we do?" I asked. Emma's eyes were wide and desperate. "We need to tell the truth," she said quietly. "He thinks Mom's hiding something. If we tell him everything, maybe—" Her voice trailed off. I turned to her, my mind spinning. "Everything? Emma, do you realize how dangerous that is?" Emma nodded. Her small hand rested on the railing. "I don't care anymore. He's dangerous anyway. Hiding won't help." Laura shook her head violently. "No, you don't understand. He's not just dangerous. He's been waiting for this moment for 10 years. We can't reason with him." The metallic door rattled again. Victor's voice came through the cracks. Calm, controlled, unshakable. "I know you're down there, Laura. I know Daniel's home, too. You can't hide from me." I felt my stomach drop. Every instinct screamed at me to do something, but I also knew that one wrong move could trigger something irreversible. We were trapped. I took a deep breath, forcing my mind to focus. "Laura, tell me the full story. Everything Victor wants. We need to understand what we're dealing with." Laura's eyes darted to Emma and back to me. She swallowed hard, her voice barely above a whisper. 10 years ago, Victor and we were involved in a business deal. It went wrong. He lost a lot of money, and he believes you, Daniel, took it from him. Even though it wasn't true, we were supposed to pay him back, but life got complicated. You know how it is. And then he disappeared, went to prison, but he's been plotting revenge ever since. I felt my head spin. He's been planning this for 10 years? Laura nodded. Yes, and he's smart. He's patient. He's been watching us, waiting for the right moment, and the moment he thought we were vulnerable, he came back. Emma stepped closer to the bottom of the stairs. "That's why I locked Mom down here," she whispered. "I thought if I kept her somewhere he couldn't see, maybe he wouldn't hurt her." I looked at my daughter, my heart breaking. She was terrified but brave enough to take action in a situation far beyond her age. I wanted to pull her into my arms, but we didn't have the luxury of movement. The metallic scrape came again from upstairs. A shadow fell across the basement ceiling as the dim light from the bulb flickered. I could hear Victor's footsteps moving toward the stairs. Laura grabbed my arm again. "Daniel, you have to promise me you won't let him find out you're here." I nodded, though my hands were still trembling. "I promise, but we need a plan." Emma's eyes flicked toward the old workbench. We could barricade the door, slow him down, maybe get time to call the police." I considered it. It wasn't much, but it was something. "All right, Emma, help me move that heavy shelf." We lifted the metal shelf with a groan, dragging it across the concrete floor toward the basement door. Every creak of the wood above us made my heart jump. Laura stood frozen, her eyes fixed on the shadowy outline of the staircase. Victor's voice came again, calm, deliberate. "I know you're moving something down there, Laura. Don't bother. I can open it if I want." I froze. His confidence was terrifying. He wasn't just threatening. He believed he had power over us, and in a way, he did. Emma and I managed to wedge the shelf against the basement door. It wouldn't hold him for long, but it was better than nothing. I crouched low, my mind racing. "Laura, do you have your phone?" I whispered. She shook her head. "I left it upstairs. I didn't want him to see it." I cursed under my breath. No way to call for help, no backup, nothing. Emma looked at me, her face pale. "Daniel, what if he comes down here?" I swallowed hard. "Then we fight, we protect each other." Another step sounded above us. He was moving closer. I could hear the faint creak of the staircase. Laura grabbed my arm again. "Daniel, he's going to check the basement. He knows you're home." I nodded slightly, trying to mask my fear. "Emma, stay close. Mom, hold on to each other. And remember, he's predictable. He thinks fear will control us." The basement door handle rattled again. Victor's voice came through the cracks. Calm, controlled, even calmer than before. "Laura, I know you're hiding. I know Daniel's home too. You can't hide from me." My pulse jumped. The door handle twisted again, harder this time. I pressed my shoulder against the shelf, trying to keep it in place. It shifted slightly under his pressure. Laura's hands were clammy against my arm. "He's going to get in," she whispered. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. "Emma, now, go upstairs through the side door, quietly. Don't make a sound." Emma's eyes widened. "Alone?" "Yes," I whispered. "Take the long way around. Go. Don't look back." Tears filled her eyes. She nodded slowly, swallowed, and slipped past the shelf, moving silently toward the basement stairs. I watched her go, my heart aching. I didn't know if she would make it, but I had no choice. Laura tightened my arm again. "Daniel, I'm scared." I forced a small nod. "I know, but we have each other. Stay close." The basement handle rattled again, stronger this time. Victor was testing the door. I could hear the scrape of the metal shelf shifting slightly under his pressure. Then he spoke again. "I warned you. You can't hide forever." I gritted my teeth. "We're not hiding," I whispered, mostly to myself. Another creak, another step. He was on the stairs. I could hear the shift in his weight, feel it through the floorboards above. Laura whispered urgently, "Daniel, he's coming down." I pressed my back against the wall, keeping my hands free. "Stay behind me," I said. The first footstep hit the basement stairs, slow, deliberate, like a predator stalking prey. My mind raced. How could I protect them? How could I protect myself? Then a sudden realization hit me. Victor had underestimated Emma. He didn't know she had been watching. He didn't know we were prepared. And that mistake might be the only chance we had to survive this night. The first stair creaked under his weight. The second, the third, then silence. I held my breath, listening. Something shifted upstairs. Something metal fell. Victor cursed, loud, frustrated, and in that moment, I knew the fight was about to begin. The basement fell silent for a moment. The only sound my own ragged breathing and the faint creak of the shelf against the door. Victor's curse echoed faintly from above, sharp and angry. I didn't move. I didn't dare. Every muscle in my body was tense, waiting for him to make the next move. Laura clutched my arm so tightly I could feel her fingernails digging in. "Daniel, what are we going to do?" she whispered. I swallowed hard. "We survive," I said quietly. "That's all we do for now. We survive." Another metallic scrape came from above. The shelf rattled again. Victor was testing it, pushing harder, trying to force the door open. My mind raced through possibilities: how to protect Laura, how to protect Emma, how to survive this man who had been plotting vengeance for 10 years. "Daniel," Laura whispered again, her voice trembling. "We should fight him. He's coming down anyway." I shook my head slowly. "No, not yet. If he comes down here and we're ready, we might only have one chance to stop him." Victor's voice came again, louder this time, more impatient. "I can hear your little trap down there, Laura. You think that shelf is going to stop me?" Laura flinched at the tone, but I pressed my mouth to her, shushing her. He needed to think we were helpless, scared, hiding. That was our advantage. The footsteps started again, slow, deliberate, descending the stairs. Each creak echoed like a gunshot in the basement. My pulse raced. I could feel the heat in my chest, the fear threatening to overwhelm me. But I had to stay calm. Another step, another, then silence. I strained to listen, trying to anticipate his next move. Then the basement door handle rattled violently. The shelf shifted, scraping against the concrete floor. Victor cursed again, a deep, angry sound that sent chills through me. I tightened my grip on a small metal pipe leaning against the wall, my only weapon. I didn't want to use it, but if he came down, I would have no choice. Laura pressed closer to me. "Daniel," she whispered, "if he breaks in, we fight together, okay?" I nodded slowly. Together. Another step. The shelf shifted again. I pressed my shoulder against it, gritting my teeth. Then Victor spoke, calm, mocking. "You think I'm going to fall for your little game, Laura? You think I don't know you're not alone?" My blood ran cold. He knew, somehow he knew Emma was here, or maybe he just assumed. Either way, the advantage was slipping. Laura and I exchanged a glance. We had no more time. The handle twisted again, harder this time. The shelf gave slightly under the pressure. My mind screamed. This was it. He was going to break through. "Laura, ready?" I whispered. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Yes." The basement door splintered slightly under the next push. Victor was coming. I grabbed the metal pipe, holding it tightly. Laura did the same, grabbing a heavy wrench from the workbench. We positioned ourselves near the door, ready. Then the door burst open. Victor stepped into the basement, his face a mix of anger and satisfaction. He didn't rush. He walked slowly, confident, like a man who believed he already owned us. "Hello, Daniel," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "Long time no see?" I raised the pipe. "Stay back." Victor smirked. "I wouldn't dream of it." He took a step closer, then another. My heart pounded, every nerve screamed to strike. But then something unexpected happened. Emma's voice echoed from the stairs. "Stop!" Victor froze, his head snapping toward the sound. Emma appeared at the top of the stairs, her small frame standing tall and defiant. She held nothing in her hands, but her eyes burned with determination. "You're not scaring us anymore," she said, her voice steady despite the trembling of her hands. "Leave, now, or we call the police right now." Victor's eyes narrowed. He looked from Emma to Laura to me. Then he laughed, low, cruel. "You think a child can stop me?" Emma's voice didn't waver. "I don't care what you think. Just leave." For a moment, there was silence. Then Victor's expression changed. I could see it. Hesitation, uncertainty. He had underestimated her. And in that moment, I realized something. Emma had given us a chance, a small, dangerous chance, but a chance nonetheless. I stepped forward, keeping the pipe raised. "Victor," I said calmly, though my voice shook, "this ends tonight. You leave, or we make sure you never come back." Victor's gaze flicked to Laura, then back to Emma, then to me. His smirk returned, but this time it was forced. "You're brave," he said slowly. "I'll give you that. But bravery doesn't win wars." I didn't answer. I just stood there, holding my weapon, waiting for him to make a move. Victor's eyes scanned the basement, taking in the furniture, the concrete walls, the shadows. Then he sighed, almost disappointed. "Fine," he said finally. "You want to play it this way? You win, for now." He stepped backward toward the stairs. "But remember, Daniel, this isn't over. Not by a long shot. And with that, he turned and disappeared up the stairs, moving with the same deliberate calm he had shown before. We stood there in silence for a long moment. The basement door shook slightly as it settled, the shelf barely holding it in place. Laura sank to the floor, tears streaming freely. "Oh my God, he's gone. He's really gone." I dropped the pipe, my hands trembling. I crouched beside her, wrapping my arms around her. "It's okay. He's gone, for now." Emma stepped down the stairs, her face pale but triumphant. "I knew he wouldn't expect me," she said softly. "He thought we were weak." I looked at my daughter and felt a surge of pride mixed with fear. She had been brave, so brave when the situation demanded it. Laura looked at both of us, still shaking. "We need to call the police," she said finally. "We can't wait for him to come back." I nodded. Yes, right now. I grabbed my phone from my pocket, thankfully I had it with me, and dialed 911. My voice was steady, calm, recounting everything we knew about Victor, the threats, the visits, and the basement situation. The dispatcher's voice was reassuring, promising help was on the way, but I knew it would take time, and in that time, we had to be ready. Laura hugged Emma tightly. "You saved us," she whispered. Emma shrugged, looking away. "I just did what I had to." I watched them, my heart heavy. We had survived the night, but the danger wasn't truly gone. Victor was still out there, and he was patient. He would be back if he didn't get what he wanted. And the truth about our family, the secrets we had buried from each other, the lies we had told ourselves to survive, those things were still waiting to be uncovered. But for now, we were alive, and that was enough to plan our next move. Outside, I could hear the distant wail of sirens approaching. The police were coming. For the first time in hours, I allowed myself to breathe. We had survived the night, but I knew this wasn't the end, not by a long shot. And as I looked at Laura and Emma, I realized something even scarier than Victor. The truth about the secrets we had kept from each other, and the danger of underestimating what a frightened daughter would do to protect her family. We were safe, for now. The sirens were getting closer now, a steady, distant wail cutting through the quiet of the night. My hands were still trembling, but I forced myself to focus. Laura was crouched beside me, still hugging Emma, who had wrapped her small arms around her mother like a shield. I had never seen my daughter so serious, so determined. In just a few hours, she had gone from terrified teen to someone who had faced a life-or-death situation and come out unshaken. The front door rattled slightly from the wind, and I realized we hadn't even locked it after Victor had fled. My stomach twisted with worry. What if he came back before the police arrived? What if he had already planned for that contingency? I quickly ran upstairs with Laura and Emma trailing behind me. I locked every door, double-checked the windows, and tried to calm myself. Once we were secured in the living room, I sat on the couch, my head in my hands. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving me exhausted in every way imaginable, mentally, physically, emotionally. "We're safe," I whispered, though it didn't feel real. "We're really safe." Laura sank beside me, pulling me close. "Daniel, I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I never wanted it to come to this. I never wanted Emma to have to do what she did." I shook my head. "No, this isn't your fault or hers. We're alive, and that's what matters. That's all that matters right now." Emma, still shaking, sat cross-legged on the floor. She didn't speak, she didn't cry. She just sat, staring at the floor with a faraway look in her eyes, the same look she had when she first told me about Victor. I wanted to reach out to her, but I didn't know if I could. This night had aged her in ways I couldn't even begin to understand. The sound of police cars pulling into the driveway finally cut through the tension. I jumped up, motioning for Laura and Emma to stay behind me. My heart pounded as officers approached the house, their flashlights sweeping over the front lawn. A voice called out, "Police! Is anyone inside?" I stepped forward. "Yes, we're inside," I shouted. "There was a man here. He threatened us." Within moments, officers were inside the house, flashlights cutting through every shadow. They moved quickly, checking rooms, scanning the perimeter, and questioning us. I recounted the story as best I could, from the moment we arrived home from the hospital to the confrontation in the basement. The officers listened attentively, taking notes and asking questions I hadn't even thought of. One of them, a middle-aged officer with a calm demeanor, asked me, "Do you know Victor Cole?" I froze for a moment. "Yes," I said finally. "I know of him. He's been holding a grudge against my family for years, 10 years, actually. He's been plotting revenge ever since." The officer nodded slowly. "We'll need full details, everything you know about him, any history you have, anything about his previous crimes, financial disputes, threats, everything." I nodded, already feeling the weight of the story settling heavily on my shoulders. 10 years of secrets, lies, and half-truths were about to be laid bare, and part of me was terrified of what would happen next. As the officers continued their sweep of the house, I finally looked at Laura and Emma. "Are you both okay?" I asked softly. Laura shook her head slightly. "We will be, eventually." Emma didn't answer. She just looked at me with those wide, serious eyes, like she had seen too much in one night. I wanted to reach out to her, but I didn't know if I could. This night had aged her in ways I couldn't even begin to understand. As the officers left, promising to keep a close watch on the neighborhood, I felt a mixture of relief and unease. We had survived Victor tonight, but the danger wasn't gone. He was out there, somewhere, waiting, planning. That night, we packed a few essentials and left the house, leaving behind the basement where Laura had been tied up, the same basement that now felt like a tomb of secrets. We drove to a nearby hotel, one I had found through my phone earlier, far from our neighborhood. The ride was silent except for the occasional sniffle from Emma and the quiet sobs of Laura. When we arrived, I checked in quickly, getting a room for the three of us. Once inside, I locked the door and leaned against it, exhausted in every sense of the word. Laura collapsed onto the bed, burying her face in her hands. "I can't believe this happened," she whispered. I sat beside her, taking her hand gently. It did happen, and we survived. That's what matters. Emma, still shaking, sat cross-legged on the floor. She didn't speak, she didn't cry. She just sat, staring at the floor with a faraway look in her eyes, the same look she had when she first told me about Victor. I knelt down in front of her, holding her face gently in my hands. "I know," I said softly. "You did more than that. You were brave. You were smarter than we were at times tonight, and you saved us all." Tears glistened in her eyes, and for the first time since that night began, I allowed myself to feel proud, not just for myself, but for my daughter, for my wife. We had faced fear and danger and survived. But as I looked at them both, I couldn't shake the thought lingering in the back of my mind. Victor wasn't done. He'd be back, and next time he might not be so patient. I sat there for hours with them, talking quietly, holding each other, and trying to process what had just happened. We shared memories, small jokes, anything to distract ourselves from the fear that still loomed over us. And yet, even as we laughed quietly and tried to find comfort in each other, a shadow of unease lingered. Secrets, lies, and long-held grudges had brought us to the brink tonight. And the truth was, we were only beginning to uncover the depth of those secrets. But one thing was clear: whatever came next, we'd face it together. No more hiding, no more lies, only truth, bravery, and the bond that held us as a family. And in that moment, I realized something profound. Our family could survive almost anything as long as we stayed united. But even as I embraced that thought, I knew we weren't out of the woods yet. Victor's shadow still loomed, and the real battle, one for justice, truth, and the safety of our family, was only beginning. The night had tested us beyond anything I could have imagined, and somehow in the quiet darkness of that hotel room, I knew we had taken the first steps towards reclaiming our lives. Yet I also knew that the real danger, the real confrontation with the truth, and the final reckoning with Victor Cole was still ahead. The next morning, the sunlight filtering through the hotel blinds felt surreal, almost unreal. After the terror of the previous night, everything seemed fragile, as if the world outside had paused to let us catch our breath. Laura and Emma were still quiet, sitting on separate chairs, drinking lukewarm coffee I had ordered from room service. The three of us barely slept. Every creak, every car passing by made us jump. The memory of Victor's calm, dangerous voice echoed in my mind constantly. We had called the police the night before, and they had promised to send extra patrols near our house, but we all knew that didn't guarantee anything. Victor had been patient for 10 years. He wasn't going to give up so easily, and that thought pressed down on me like a physical weight. Laura finally broke the silence. "Daniel, we need to talk about what happened." Her voice was quiet, almost fragile. "About everything. Victor, Emma, the basement, us." I nodded slowly. "I know, we do, but we need to be careful. I don't want to panic Emma further." Emma's head lifted slightly at the mention of her name, but she didn't speak. She was still absorbing the events of the night before, processing the weight of what she had done. She had faced a dangerous man, one who had come to kill or at least intimidate us, and she had stood her ground. She had saved her mother and me, and yet I could see the burden she carried. I took a deep breath. "Emma, you need to understand something. What you did last night, it was brave, and it saved us, but it also put you at risk. You were scared and you acted, but from now on, no more risks like that. Promise me." Emma looked at me, eyes serious, and nodded slowly. "I promise," she whispered. Laura reached over and held both our hands. "We're going to get through this," she said softly, "together. But we need to face the truth, not just Victor, but everything that led to this night. Secrets, lies, the things we've avoided for years." I felt the weight of her words. She was right. The night had revealed not just Victor's threat, but the cracks in our family, the unspoken tensions, the misunderstandings, the fear and mistrust that had built up over time. It was time to confront those truths. Laura took a deep breath and began. "Victor's anger isn't just about money. It's about revenge. And yes, there was a mistake 10 years ago, one that I didn't fully explain to you, Daniel. I didn't want to burden you while you were busy with work and family. But now, it's time you knew everything." I leaned back, listening intently. "Go on." Laura's voice trembled slightly. 10 years ago, Victor and I were involved in a business arrangement. I thought we had managed it carefully, but mistakes were made. He lost a lot of money, and he blamed us, me mostly, and by extension, you. He went to prison, but he never forgave me. He's been planning this night for years, waiting for a moment when he thought we'd be vulnerable, and somehow he found us. Emma's voice broke the silence. "Why didn't you tell Dad? Why hide it?" Laura looked at her daughter, pain and guilt etched into her face. Because I thought I could handle it. I thought I could keep you both safe by keeping it from Daniel. I didn't want him worrying about things he couldn't control. I felt a surge of emotion, anger, betrayal, fear, but also understanding. I get it, I said quietly, but keeping secrets almost cost us everything last night, and Emma almost paid the price. Emma lowered her gaze. I know, that's why I acted. I couldn't let him hurt you or Mom. Laura's eyes filled with tears. Emma, you're stronger than I ever imagined, braver than I was. I should have trusted you more. I reached over and pulled both of them close. We've all made mistakes, I said softly, but tonight we survived, and that counts for more than anything else. A moment of silence followed, broken only by the distant hum of the city outside. Then I spoke, my voice steady but filled with determination. We need a plan. Victor won't stop. He's patient, he's dangerous, and he knows we're scared, but we're stronger than he thinks. We're a family, and we're not going to let fear control us anymore. Laura nodded slowly. You're right. We can't let him manipulate us. We need to be prepared, legally, physically, emotionally, and we need to stick together. I looked at Emma. And you have to promise me, no more taking risks alone. You're brave, but you're still my daughter. I can't lose you, not like this. She nodded again, more firmly this time. I promise, Dad. The three of us sat together, hands intertwined, forming a silent pact. We would survive this, no matter what. But the thought of Victor still out there, waiting, planning, made my stomach churn. He wasn't just an intruder or a criminal. He was a man obsessed, someone who would not give up until he believed he had won. Hours later, after the initial panic had passed, I called the police again to update them on Victor's movements and ensure extra patrols were in the area. They reassured me that they would monitor our home and neighborhood closely, but they also reminded me that Victor was unpredictable. He was dangerous and clever. We needed to remain vigilant. Laura and Emma stayed in the hotel room with me, and we spent the rest of the day talking quietly, sharing stories from the past, laughing softly when we could, and crying when the memories became too heavy. We discussed the events that led to Victor's obsession, the misunderstandings that had fueled it, and the choices we had made that night. Through it all, I realized something profound. Our family had been fractured by fear, by secrets, by misunderstandings, but that night had forced us to confront those fractures. We had survived because we had faced the truth together, because we trusted each other when it mattered most. By evening, the police contacted us with updates. Patrols would continue overnight, and they would visit the house periodically to ensure Victor had not returned. We felt a little more secure, but the tension never fully lifted. The shadow of that night lingered, a reminder of how fragile life could be and how quickly fear could consume you if you weren't careful. I sat with Laura and Emma on the hotel bed, holding their hands tightly. No matter what happens next, I said, we face it together. Secrets, lies, threats, they won't break us. Not now, not ever. Laura rested her head on my shoulder. You're right, together. Emma looked at us, a faint smile on her face despite the exhaustion in her eyes. Together, she echoed. And in that moment, despite the fear, despite the uncertainty, I felt a flicker of hope. We had survived the night, confronted our fears, and taken the first steps towards reclaiming our lives. But deep down, I knew Victor Cole was still out there, and the truth about what he wanted and what lengths he would go to get it was still unfolding. It was a dangerous, uncertain future, but we had learned something crucial. We were stronger than fear, stronger than secrets, and stronger together. And as we sat in that small hotel room, holding each other close, I made a silent promise. No more lies, no more hiding, no more letting fear control our lives. We survived Victor Cole tonight, but we were ready, ready for whatever came next, ready to face the truth, and most importantly, ready to face it together. The morning sunlight streamed through the hotel blinds, casting long shadows across the room, but the sense of dread from the previous night lingered like a heavy fog. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at Emma and Laura. They were quiet, exhausted, yet resolute. Last night had changed us, forever. Not just because of Victor, but because the truth we had been hiding from each other had finally come to light. We had survived the immediate danger, but survival was only the first step. Now came the reckoning. I took a deep breath. "We can't wait for him to come back," I said, my voice low but firm. "Victor Cole isn't going to stop. We have to take control of this." Laura nodded slowly. "We need evidence, we need protection, and we need to make sure he can't hurt us or anyone else ever again." Emma looked up at me, her eyes filled with the quiet courage that had carried her through the night. "Dad, I know what I did was risky, but if we're going to stop him, I want to help. I can't just sit here." I shook my head gently. "Emma, you were brave last night. You did what was needed, but this time we do it smart, together. No more solo heroics." Laura leaned forward, determination replacing her exhaustion. "We need a plan. First, we need the police to set up surveillance on the house. Then we need to figure out exactly what Victor wants and how far he's willing to go." I nodded, thinking through the possibilities. Victor's obsession isn't just about revenge, it's about control. 10 years of planning means he's patient, calculated. We have to be one step ahead, always. We spent the morning coordinating with the police, giving them every detail we could remember about Victor's past actions, his behavior last night, and the threats he had made. They took our statements seriously, assigning officers to monitor the neighborhood and setting up periodic patrols. But they also warned us Victor was dangerous and unpredictable. Their presence could only deter him temporarily. Once the calls were done, we sat together in the hotel room, trying to gather our thoughts. Silence hung heavy in the air, but it was a different kind of silence, one that spoke of reflection, of careful consideration. Laura finally broke it. "Daniel, we need to talk about the basement, about why I didn't tell you everything." Her voice was quiet, remorseful. "I thought I was protecting you, and in a way I was, but I see now that my secrecy almost destroyed us." I reached out and took her hand. "I understand," I said softly. "We all make mistakes. Last night, we saw how fear and secrets can spiral, but we also saw the strength of our family when we faced the truth together." Emma, sitting cross-legged on the floor, spoke up. "Dad, Mom, I know things were complicated, but we can't let fear rule us. We have to be honest with each other. No more lies." I nodded, looking at my daughter with a mix of pride and worry. "You're right. Honesty is our strongest weapon now, and bravery, too. We need both to stop Victor from hurting anyone again." Later that afternoon, we returned to the house, escorted by police officers. The neighborhood looked normal, peaceful even, but the memory of Victor's presence lingered in every shadow, every creaking floorboard. I walked through the rooms slowly, checking locks, inspecting windows, and making sure everything was secure. Laura and Emma followed closely, both silent but alert. We approached the basement door cautiously. The sight of it, the place where Laura had been tied up, where Victor had almost succeeded in his plan, made my stomach twist. But we survived. That thought gave me a sense of quiet strength. Laura knelt beside the door. I need to see if there's anything else he left behind, she said, her voice steady but tense. She carefully examined the lock, the floor, the corners. Nothing obvious, but we need cameras, security, everything. I agreed, and the police will continue monitoring the house. Victor might test us again, but we'll be ready. Emma stepped forward, looking at the basement with a mixture of fear and determination. Dad, this is where I did what I had to, and I'll never forget it. But we can't let this place be a trap again. We need to make it safe. I put my hand on her shoulder. You made it safe last night with your courage. Tonight and beyond, we make it safe with planning, with truth, and with each other. The next few days were filled with careful preparation. We installed cameras, upgraded locks, and coordinated with the police to maintain constant surveillance. Laura and I spoke openly about our past mistakes, the decisions that had put us in danger, and the secrets we had kept from each other. Emma joined us, contributing her insights, her observations, and her determination. For the first time in years, we felt like a united front. But even as we worked, I couldn't shake the sense of lingering danger. Victor wasn't a man who would quit easily. He had waited 10 years for revenge. He'd wait 10 more if necessary. And now that he'd seen our family's strength, he might escalate his tactics. One evening, as we sat together in the living room, Emma broke the quiet. Dad, what if he comes back no matter what we do? I took a deep breath, looking at her serious, determined face. Then we'll face him, together. No more secrets, no more fear controlling us. Whatever comes, we are a family, and nothing can break that. Laura reached over, holding both our hands. We survived last night because of honesty and courage, and we'll survive whatever comes next for the same reasons. Together. Emma nodded slowly. Together, she echoed. In that moment, I realized something profound. Victor underestimated us. He'd counted on fear, secrecy, and hesitation, but he hadn't counted on the power of a family confronting its truths, facing its fears, and refusing to be broken. The night air was still and calm outside, but inside I felt a sense of resolution growing. We had survived a nightmare, uncovered long-hidden truth, and learned the strength that comes from honesty, courage, and unity. Victor Cole may still be out there, scheming and waiting, but we had reclaimed control over our lives. We were no longer victims of fear. We were no longer bound by secrets. We were a family ready to face the world, together, stronger than ever. As I watched Laura and Emma, their faces weary but resolute, I felt a quiet pride. The night that could have destroyed us instead had forged a bond that nothing could break. And for the first time in years, I allowed myself to hope. Hope that Victor would be stopped. Hope that we could rebuild our lives without fear. And hope that no matter what the future held, our family would face it side by side, unshaken, unbroken, and unafraid. Because survival wasn't just about escaping danger. Survival was about truth, courage, and the unshakable bond of family. And after everything, I knew, finally, that we were ready for whatever came next.